The arrival, the sky above New York City split open like a wound. It wasn't gradual. There was no warning from telescopes or satellites. One moment, the sun hung in a clear autumn sky. The next, reality itself seemed to crack, spilling darkness and violet light across the heavens. People stopped mid-stride on Fifth Avenue. Traffic halted. Millions of phones lifted toward the sky, recording what would become humanity's last moment of innocence. The ships came through in silence. They were massive, each one larger than Manhattan Island itself. Their hulls were black as deep space, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dozens of them descended through that impossible tear in the sky, moving with the slow confidence of predators who knew their prey was helpless. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the emergency command center beneath the Pentagon, watching the same footage that was playing on every screen across the planet. Her hands gripped the edge of the tactical table, knuckles white. "Ma'am," a young analyst said, voice shaking, "they're not responding to any communication attempts. Radio, laser, quantum, nothing. It's like they don't even acknowledge we're trying." Elena's jaw tightened. 20 years in the Air Force had prepared her for many scenarios. Alien invasion had been on the list theoretically, but theory was bloodless. Theory didn't capture the primal terror of watching something utterly foreign hang in your sky. "Get me casualty reports," she ordered, "and someone tell me what those ships are doing." The answer came faster than she wanted. In Beijing, Moscow, London, São Paulo, Tokyo, above every major city on Earth, the ships had positioned themselves. Then, without ceremony or declaration, they began. Beams of golden light erupted from the underbellies of the vessels, sweeping across urban landscapes like searchlights. But these weren't just lights. Where they touched, structures dissolved. Buildings that had stood for centuries turned to fine dust in seconds. Roads melted. Power grids exploded in cascades of sparks that lit the growing darkness. The death toll climbed with horrifying speed. Elena watched the numbers scroll across her screen, each digit representing thousands of lives. Her stomach churned, but she forced her expression to remain calm. Her team needed to see strength, not the despair clawing at her chest. "Why?" someone whispered behind her. "Why are they doing this?" That was the question that haunted her. In every simulation, every war game humanity had ever run about first contact, there was always a reason. Resources, territory, ideology. But this felt different. This felt like extermination for its own sake. Then the message came. Every screen on Earth, from military command centers to smartphones, went dark simultaneously. When they flickered back to life, there was a face. Not human, but close enough to trigger an instinctive revulsion. Its skin was pale gray, stretched tight over angular bones. Eyes like polished obsidian reflected no light. When it spoke, the words bypassed language entirely, imprinting directly into human consciousness. Humanity of Earth. You are hereby notified of your species' obsolescence. This world has been designated for reclamation. Your continued existence serves no purpose to the collective. Resistance will accelerate your termination. Compliance will be met with swift mercy. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. For 3 seconds, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. Then the panic truly began. Cities erupted into chaos. Highways became parking lots as millions tried to flee to nowhere. Emergency services collapsed under the weight of simultaneous catastrophes. Governments scrambled to mobilize militaries that seemed pathetically inadequate against technology that could tear reality apart. But in that command center beneath the Pentagon, something else was happening. Elena Vasquez looked at the faces around her. Young analysts, veteran generals, scientists pulled from their labs, soldiers who'd seen combat and those who hadn't. She saw fear, yes, that was rational. But she also saw something the aliens hadn't accounted for. She saw anger. "Ma'am," said General Marcus Webb, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. "Our weapons, standard missiles, railguns, even the experimental energy platforms, what do we have that can hurt those things?" Elena pulled up the data. She'd been reviewing it even as the world fell apart, her mind already racing through possibilities. The results weren't encouraging. Human weapons were designed to fight human enemies. These ships absorbed or deflected everything conventional they'd thrown at them so far. "Conventional approach won't work," she said flatly. "We need to think differently. We need to—" An alert screamed across every console. "Impact detected," someone shouted. "Moscow sector." Nuclear detonation confirmed. The room fell silent. Russia had made the choice everyone feared and expected. If conventional weapons failed, go bigger. Go nuclear. They watched the satellite feed. The mushroom cloud rose over what had been one of Earth's greatest cities. A pillar of fire and fury that had ended empires and defined an age of terror. The alien ship emerged from the blast completely unharmed. Its hull didn't even glow with residual heat. It simply continued its methodical destruction, sweeping that golden beam across the irradiated ruins, as if humanity's most powerful weapon was nothing more than a harsh breeze. Despair rippled through the command center. But Elena Vasquez was smiling. It was a terrible smile, cold and sharp, because she'd just seen something crucial. In that moment when the nuclear fire had engulfed the ship, just for a fraction of a second, the golden beam had flickered. "They're not invulnerable," she said quietly. General Webb looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Commander, that was a 50-megaton warhead. It didn't even scratch—" "It made them flinch," Elena interrupted. The beam flickered. Just for a microsecond, but it flickered. Which means their power systems have limits. Which means they can be hurt. She straightened, her voice rising. Which means we can fight. Around her, something shifted. Spine straightened. Eyes hardened. The prey animals that had frozen in headlights remembered they had teeth. "Get me every scientist still alive who specializes in exotic physics," Elena commanded. "Get me every military commander who's ever thought outside the box. Get me the hackers, the engineers, the crazy ones who propose ideas we normally reject." She locked eyes with General Webb. "These aliens think we're obsolete. They think we're prey. They've just made the biggest mistake of their existence." Her voice dropped to something deadly. "They've given humanity a reason to get creative." The resistance doctor, Sarah Chen, hadn't slept in 72 hours. Her lab at MIT, or what remained of it after the beam had carved through the eastern wing, had become ground zero for humanity's desperate gamble. Around her, scientists from a dozen nations worked shoulder to shoulder, their normal rivalries forgotten. Chinese physicists collaborated with American engineers. Russian mathematicians argued theories with Indian quantum specialists. The old world and its borders had died 3 days ago. What remained was simply human. "Run it again," Sarah said, her eyes fixed on the holographic display hovering above the makeshift workstation. The footage played for the 100th time. That crucial moment when nuclear fire had kissed the alien hull, and their weapon had flickered. Frame by frame, they'd analyzed every photon, every electromagnetic signature, every quantum fluctuation. "There," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, pointing at a spike in the data. "See that harmonic resonance? Their shields interact with our nuclear strong force, but not the way we'd expect. It's almost like they're rotating dimensions," Sarah finished, her exhaustion forgotten in a rush of understanding. "They're not absorbing the energy. They're redirecting it into a perpendicular dimensional space. That's why nothing touches them. But the flicker means there's a rotation period, a gap. Microseconds where they're vulnerable while the shield resets." Sarah's hands flew across the keyboard, pulling up more data. "If we can time our strikes to match that gap, we'd need to know the exact frequency," Yuki said, doubt creeping into his voice. "And even if we hit that window, our weapons still need to be powerful enough to—" An alarm cut him off. Every screen in the lab switched to the emergency broadcast. Commander Vasquez's face appeared, gray with exhaustion but burning with intensity. "All remaining defensive positions, this is priority alpha. New York is about to fall. Repeat, New York is about to fall. We're evacuating everyone we can, but we need time. Any units in position, engage and buy us that time." The feed cut to aerial footage of Manhattan. 3 of the massive alien ships had converged on the island, their golden beams systematically erasing one of humanity's greatest cities. But between them and the evacuation routes, a thin line of human defiance had formed. Tanks, fighter jets, soldiers with rifles that might as well have been throwing rocks. They all knew what their weapons could do against those ships. They knew it was suicide. They attacked anyway. Sarah watched as an F-35 squadron screamed toward the nearest vessel, their missiles leaving contrails of desperation. The weapons detonated against the invisible shield in flowers of useless fire. Then the golden beam swept across the sky and the fighters simply ceased to exist. But their sacrifice bought 30 seconds. 30 seconds for the convoy of refugees below to move another half-mile toward safety. Again, someone was shouting over the tactical channel. "Hit them again!" More fighters dove. More tanks fired. More soldiers stood their ground. And more died. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but her hands never stopped working. Every death had to mean something. Every sacrifice had to buy them the time they needed to find the answer. Dr. Chen, a young physicist, burst into the lab, tablet in hand. The data from the Moscow strike. We've been analyzing the shield flicker patterns across all nuclear detonations. There's a pattern, look. Sarah grabbed the tablet, her exhausted mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Then it clicked. Oh my God, she whispered. The frequency changes based on the intensity of the attack. They're adaptive, but not instantly. There's a calculation period. Which means we can fake them out, Yuki said, understanding dawning. Hit them with multiple coordinated strikes, each one forcing them to recalculate. Create a cascade of reset windows. Exactly. Sarah was already pulling up communication channels, but we'd need perfect timing across multiple platforms, and we'd need something that can actually hurt them when the shields drop. I might have something. The voice came from the back of the lab. Dr. James Morrison, a plasma physicist who'd been working quietly in the corner for days, stepped forward. He looked half dead, his eyes sunken and red, but there was a manic gleam in them. The Hadron Collider. The one beneath Geneva. It survived the initial attack. He pulled up schematics. If we can modify the particle accelerator to output a focused beam instead of collision experiments, we could generate a plasma lance with temperatures exceeding the core of a star. Nothing physical could withstand that. Not even alien hull material. That's insane, someone said. That's human, Sarah corrected, a fierce smile crossing her face. Commander Vasquez needs to hear this. 8,000 miles away in the ruins of Geneva, a team of engineers worked by flashlight and sheer willpower. The Swiss Hadron Collider had been humanity's proudest achievement in particle physics, a 17-mile ring of superconducting magnets designed to unlock the secrets of the universe. Now they were turning it into a weapon. Magnetic containment is holding, reported an engineer, his French accent thick with exhaustion. But Commander, I must be honest, this has never been tested. The energy output could vaporize the entire facility. We'll get one shot. Elena Vasquez, who'd flown to Geneva personally to oversee the operation, nodded grimly. Around her, the facility hummed with barely contained power. Every functional power grid in Europe had been rerouted here, pumping electricity into the collider at levels that made the engineers wince. Above them, the alien ships continued their methodical destruction. They'd reached Geneva 2 hours ago. The city was already gone. Only the underground facility remained, and only because the aliens didn't seem to realize it was there. That ignorance was about to cost them. Targeting solution locked, said the weapons officer, a young lieutenant who'd been a video game champion before the invasion. Ship Alpha is in position. Optimal angle achieved. All strike teams, Elena spoke into her headset, report status. Around the world, the responses came in. Nuclear submarines in the Atlantic, hypersonic missile platforms in the Pacific, even old-school artillery batteries that had been pulled from museums and recommissioned in desperation. Humanity had gathered every weapon it had left, positioned them with mathematical precision, all aimed at a single target. Dr. Chen, Elena said, your calculations, how sure are you? Sarah's voice crackled through the comm. Exhaustion evident but determination stronger. The math is solid, Commander. Multiple simultaneous strikes, staggered by exactly 47 milliseconds, will create a cascade failure in their shield rotation. We'll have a window of approximately 200 milliseconds before they recover. 200 milliseconds to hurt a ship the size of a city. Elena laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. No pressure, Doctor. Commander, Sarah said, and her voice softened. For what it's worth, whatever happens today, humanity went down fighting. That matters. We're not going down, Doctor. Elena straightened, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. We're going to make them bleed. We're going to show them that we're not prey. We're not obsolete. We're human, and that means we don't quit. She took a breath. All units, on my mark. The world seemed to hold its breath. 3, 2, 1. Mark! The oceans erupted as submarines launched their payloads. The sky burned as hypersonic missiles screamed toward their target. Artillery shells, ancient and modern, arced through the air. And beneath Geneva, the Hadron Collider fired. A lance of plasma, hotter than any natural phenomenon in the solar system, tore through the earth and into the sky. It was a spear of fury, a concentration of every law of physics humanity had ever discovered, all weaponized in one desperate gamble. The alien ship's shields flickered under the initial barrage, exactly as predicted. Once, twice, 3 times the rotation reset, trying to adapt to the coordinated assault. And in that 200-millisecond gap, that tiny window of vulnerability, the plasma lance struck home. For the first time since the invasion began, an alien ship screamed. The sound was transmitted through radio frequencies, a shriek of electromagnetic agony that every piece of electronic equipment on Earth picked up. The massive vessel, invincible for 3 days of slaughter, shuddered. A section of its hull, 20 meters across, simply ceased to exist, vaporized by temperatures that could ignite fusion. The ship didn't fall. It didn't explode dramatically, but it bled. Atmosphere vented from the wound, freezing instantly into glittering crystals. Internal fires blazed in colors that had no name in human language. The golden beam sputtered and died, and the ship retreated. It rose slowly, damaged, wounded, pulling away from Earth's surface for the first time. The other vessels around the globe paused in their destruction, their attention suddenly focused on the impossible thing that had just occurred. In the Geneva Command Center, silence reigned for 3 heartbeats. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire facility erupted in cheers and sobs and the primal roar of prey animals who'd just drawn first blood from a predator. Elena Vasquez allowed herself 5 seconds to feel the victory. Then she was all business again. Dr. Chen, start mass producing whatever we need to replicate that effect. Every functioning facility, every lab, every garage with the equipment. I want plasma lances, magnetic accelerators, anything that can exploit that shield weakness. Already on it. Commander. General Webb, Elena continued, start coordinating defensive positions around every remaining collider, every power generation facility. The aliens know we can hurt them now. They're going to come at us harder. Understood. Elena stared at the screen showing the wounded alien ship, still visible as a dark blot against the stars. Around it, the other vessels were moving, forming new patterns, new strategies. They came here thinking we were primitives, she said softly, thinking we'd lie down and die. They forgot to ask themselves one question. What's that? General Webb asked. Elena's smile was terrifying in its cold fury. What happens when you corner a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing? The reckoning. The alien collective had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. In that time, they had encountered 247 sentient species. Some had surrendered immediately. Some had fought with primitive weapons and desperate courage. All had fallen within weeks. Earth was different. High Commander Zarthix stood in the command sphere of the flagship, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the wounded vessel limping back from Earth's surface. Around him, his officers worked in tense silence, their usual confidence shattered. Analysis, he commanded, his voice a harmonic resonance that vibrated through the neural link, connecting all collective members. The humans have discovered the shield rotation vulnerability, responded the tactical officer. They coordinated multiple primitive fusion weapons to create a cascade failure, then struck with a focused plasma weapon of unprecedented intensity. Impossible. Zarthix's skin rippled with colors that indicated disbelief. Our intelligence indicated they barely understood dimensional physics. They haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel. Nevertheless, Commander, the damage is extensive. Hull breach on Vessel 732. 40,000 collective members lost. The humans have weaponized their particle research facilities. Zarthix absorbed this information, his mind racing through calculations. In 3,000 years of conquest, the collective had lost ships to natural phenomena, to accidents, to the occasional rare species with advanced technology. But never to a pre-FTL civilization, never to primitives who should have been cowering in terror. They should be broken, he said, more to himself than anyone else. 3 days of systematic destruction. Billions dead. Their major cities in ruins. They should be begging for mercy. Commander, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Audiovisual format. It's addressed to you personally. Zarthix felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. curiosity mixed with the faintest edge of concern. Display it. The hologram materialized, a human female, wearing what appeared to be military attire. Her face was lined with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with something that made Zarthix's skin prickle instinctively. "High Commander Zarthix of the Collective," Elena Vasquez said, her voice steady. "My name is Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. Yes, we know who you are. We've been monitoring your communications. Primitive we may be, but we're fast learners." She leaned forward. "You came to our world 3 days ago and declared us obsolete. You killed billions of us, destroyed cities that took centuries to build, and you expected us to roll over and die." Elena's smile was cold enough to freeze hydrogen. "But here's what you didn't know about humanity, Commander. We're the species that looked at the deadliest predators on our planet and turned them into pets. We're the species that gazed at the stars with nothing but our eyes and figured out the mathematics of the cosmos. We split the atom. We built machines that think. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own worst impulses for 200,000 years." She paused, letting that sink in. "You hurt us, Commander. You hurt us badly. But pain is something we understand intimately. Pain is the fire that forges us. And you just handed humanity something we've never had before. A common enemy." The transmission ended. Zarthix stared at the empty hologram space, processing what he'd just witnessed. Around him, his officers waited for orders, for the certainty that had always defined collective command. For the first time in his long service, Zarthix wasn't certain of anything. "All vessels," he finally commanded. "Prepare for maximum aggression protocol. We end this world within the next 24 cycles." On Earth, the countdown had begun. In laboratories across the planet, scientists worked miracles. The Geneva plasma lance had been proof of concept. Now, humanity was scaling up with the desperate speed of a species fighting for its very existence. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in what had been an automobile manufacturing plant in Detroit. In 72 hours, they'd converted it into a weapons facility. Where cars once rolled off assembly lines, now plasma cannons were being constructed from spare parts, salvage technology, and pure human ingenuity. "How many do we have operational?" Elena asked over the comlink. 47 worldwide, Sarah reported. "Another 100 will be ready within 12 hours. Commander, they're not as powerful as the Geneva shot, but if we coordinate them..." "We will," Elena interrupted. "Dr. Morrison, what about the kinetic platforms?" James Morrison's face appeared on screen, broadcasting from a facility in Australia. Behind him, a massive railgun pointed toward the sky. 16 heavy kinetic accelerators online. We're launching telephone pole-sized tungsten rods at a significant fraction of light speed. If their shields are down, even for a microsecond, these will punch through their hulls like paper. Good. General Webb, Air and Ground Forces? Every pilot who can fly is in the air. Every soldier who can hold a rifle is in position. We've got civilian volunteers manning artillery pieces from World War II. Hell, Commander, we've got farmers building EMP devices from tractor parts. Webb's weathered face showed a fierce pride. "It won't be pretty, but we'll give them a fight." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders. Around the world, millions of humans were preparing for the battle that would decide their species' fate. Some would fight with cutting-edge technology, others with weapons their great-grandparents had used. All of them were united by one simple fact. They refused to go quietly into extinction. "All units. This is Commander Vasquez," she broadcast on every channel. "The aliens are coming back. Their scans show massive power buildups on every ship. They're done with surgical strikes. They're planning to glass the entire planet." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I won't lie to you. The odds aren't good. They have technology we barely understand. They have numbers. They have ships that can tear apart our cities like paper. By every logical measure, we should have surrendered 3 days ago. But logic isn't what makes us human. Hope isn't logical. Courage isn't logical. Love isn't logical. And the sheer stubborn refusal to kneel before anyone who thinks they can break us, that's not logical either." Her voice rose, carrying across continents, into bunkers and cockpits and artillery positions. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to show the collective and every other species watching this broadcast exactly what humanity means. We're going to fight with everything we have. We're going to hurt them, and we're going to survive. Because we're not obsolete, we're not prey, we're human. And that means when someone pushes us down, we get back up. When they hurt us, we adapt. When they try to break us, we break them first. The alien fleet descended. 200 massive vessels dropping through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation. Their intent clear. No more strategic strikes. No more careful destruction. This was extermination on a global scale. Then humanity struck. Every plasma lance fired simultaneously, their beams converging on pre-calculated targets. Nuclear missiles launched from hidden silos. Kinetic kill vehicles screamed through the atmosphere. And beneath it all, something the aliens hadn't anticipated. A coordinated electromagnetic pulse, generated by every power plant humanity could spare. Every makeshift EMP device cobbled together by desperate engineers. The pulse wouldn't penetrate the alien shields, but it didn't need to. It created interference, static in the dimensional rotation, just enough disruption to throw off the precise timing the shields required. 47 plasma lances hit 47 ships in that microsecond of vulnerability. The sky lit up like a new sun. Alien vessels shuddered under the assault. Hulls cracked. Atmosphere vented. For the second time, the collective bled, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they adapted. Multiple shield modulations detected. Sarah's voice crackled with alarm. They're rotating faster, randomizing the pattern. Commander, they've learned from our tactic. Then we learn faster, Elena snapped. All units, dynamic targeting. Morrison, your kinetic weapons, can you rapid fire them? We'll burn out the rails, but yes, do it. Chen, coordinate plasma lances in rotating patterns, keep them guessing. Ground forces, everything you have, now. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment humanity proved itself to the galaxy. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. Human weapons, crude by collective standards, filled the sky with fire and fury. Pilots rammed their damaged fighters into alien hulls when their missiles ran out. Artillery crews fired until their barrels melted. Soldiers with handheld rockets stood on rooftops and fired at ships the size of mountains, and slowly, impossibly, the aliens began to fall back. Not because human technology was superior. It wasn't. Not because human tactics were more sophisticated. They weren't. They fell back because humanity refused to calculate odds, refused to accept defeat, refused to stop fighting even when fighting seemed futile. High Commander Zarthix watched as his fourth ship went critical, its power core overloading from sustained damage. Around him, casualty reports flooded in at rates that should have been impossible against a pre-FTL species. Commander, his tactical officer said, and for the first time in collective history there was fear in that harmonic voice. Our losses are approaching 20%. The humans are targeting our damaged vessels with focused strikes. They're learning our patterns faster than we can adapt. Request permission to withdraw to orbital distance and bombard from range. Zarthix stared at Earth, that small blue world that had cost him more ships in 4 days than he'd lost in 4 decades of conquest. He thought of the human female commander, of her defiant transmission. He thought of the mathematical certainty that had guided the collective for millennia, the absolute confidence that superior technology always prevailed. And he realized that certainty was a lie. Signal the fleet, he said quietly. Full retreat. Prepare for dimensional jump. Commander, you heard me. Zarthix's colors shifted to patterns his crew had never seen. Something that might have been respect or fear or both. These humans, they're not fighting to win. They're fighting because surrender isn't in their vocabulary. Every minute we remain, we lose more vessels to beings who should have been extinct. He turned from the display. Inform the collective High Council. Earth is to be designated a forbidden world. No future contact, no observation. We leave them alone and hope they never achieve faster than light travel. Sir, that's an order. Zarthix's voice hardened. We came here expecting to claim a primitive world. Instead, we found something the galaxy hasn't seen in 3,000 years. We found a species that fights like they have nothing to lose because they've already decided that existence on their knees is worse than death standing. The collective fleet began to rise, pulling away from Earth's surface. On the ground, in bunkers and command centers worldwide, humans watched in disbelief as their enemy retreated. For 10 seconds, nobody spoke. Then the cheering began. 3 days later, Elena Vasquez stood in the ruins of New York City, looking at the skeleton of what had been the Empire State Building. Around her, the city was a graveyard, but humans were already clearing rubble, already planning reconstruction. "They're gone," General Webb said beside her. "Deep space telemetry confirms it. The entire fleet jumped out system. Just left." "We won," Elena said, and the words felt surreal. "Did we?" Webb gestured at the devastation. "Half our major cities destroyed. 2 billion dead. Our civilization set back decades, maybe centuries." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, a real smile this time, not the cold thing she'd worn during the battle. "We survived, Marcus. Against an enemy that's conquered hundreds of worlds, against technology we barely understand, against odds that should have crushed us. We survived. And more than that, we showed them who we are." She looked up at the sky where stars were becoming visible in the gathering dusk. "Somewhere out there, other species are watching. They saw what happened here. They saw a pre-FTL civilization bloody the nose of the galaxy's greatest empire. They saw humanity refuse to die." Elena's voice dropped to something fierce and proud. "We didn't just survive, General. We sent a message to every star in the sky. We told the universe that humanity is here, that we fight, that we endure, and that anyone who thinks they can erase us better bring more than they think they'll need." She placed a hand on the rubble, feeling the dust of what had been. The collective wanted to make us obsolete. Instead, they gave us unity. They gave us purpose. They gave us a reason to reach for the stars faster than we ever planned. And when we get out there, Elena's smile turned predatory. When we get out there, the galaxy is going to learn what the collective already knows. You don't invade Earth, you don't attack humanity, because we're not prey. We're the species that fought back. Far above, in the darkness between stars, the collective fleet jumped away, carrying with them the scars of their encounter with a primitive world that refused to accept its place. And on Earth, humanity began to rebuild, stronger, united, and forever changed by the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, but more importantly, that they were not afraid.